Alright everyone, I'm going to read some Wikipedia. So the Lockheed F104 Starfighter was manufactured between 1953 to 1969, but it flew for the Italians up until 2004. Over 2,500 of them were made. It had a length of 16.6 meters and a wingspan of only 6.6 meters, so it's weird that this thing would even fly. It could go over Mach 2. It was an all-weather multi-role aircraft and it was produced by several other nations as well, besides America. So many other countries flew this. I guess it was mostly known for flying in the Vietnam War, where it flew 5,000 combat sorties. That's a lot of missions. Okay, well, for me, I always liked it. I remember building realistic model kits of this when I was a kid, because it looks like a dart. It looks like a flying dart, basically, with such small wings. And it turns out the liveries of these decals are real planes. So this FG312 is sitting outside somewhere, I don't know where, and then this is sitting inside somewhere. But both of them are pretty crazy decal kits, so I'll have to complain about that a little later. But first let's get into the actual instructions and stuff here before I go to the models. Alright, so you get different instructions for the single seat or the dual seat trainer, but they're very similar. It's just the cockpit area here. So the single seat, you have the front end, it's identical to the dual. Since the dual you put a seat in, and on the singles you put a blanking cover in. But you'll notice here in the illustration there's 4 little tiny pegs holding this back cockpit in place, and there's 4 corresponding tiny holes in the fuselage. And I misaligned one of those pegs putting it together. I didn't realize it till after I painted it. So the design of this model kit could have been a lot better, to basically just have a groove, because the front is just the whole thing fits inside of a groove. So you can't make that mistake, you know? So I've realized that this brand is not the greatest model kit company. The fit and finish is a lot sloppier than Tiger and even Hasegawa probably. Where this wing gets slid into this vertical stabilizer, it's really difficult. You have to kind of stretch it out a little bit, and then even after you get it in, it's all crooked, right? So it's not a tight fit. A lot of the parts are very loose, essentially, which is not what you want with a model kit. You want parts to fit tightly so they're more aligned. Yeah. What is cool about this brand, though, is they give you these cool little figures, and the head is separate from the helmet, which is separate from the body, and one of the arms could be either flat or holding the flight stick. And it came with a clear piece that you can paint smoked, which I didn't bother doing, or it also came with an opaque piece that you can put in there. So, and then the little hose pieces as well. So the pilots are actually very well detailed for something so small. The rest of it all went together fine. The wheels can actually roll, at least the rear wheels can, but I don't care about that. It is a little also weird. Well, you know, it's not weird. I was going to say, well, they have a separate piece for the inside wheel, but the outside wheel is molded with the tire, so it's difficult to paint the outside versus the inside. But you're going to see the outside more than the inside, so I feel like that could have been flip-flopped. Or really, they should just have a wheel piece and a separate tire piece that slides over it, like 1/64 scale cars do. So I don't know why they make wheels like this. That makes no sense, right? If you're gonna have 2 pieces, have the tire one piece, have the wheel a separate piece. That simple. They do give you the parts to have it in flight mode, as you can see, or landing mode. So that's good. Alright, so yeah, there's that blanking piece for the single cockpit thing. It just covers that all up. But it was a bit gappy as well. And it doesn't come with this. This is a different model kit with this different nose. It does come with the smaller long, you know, for kids. Anyways, so I have long tips on both of these. Now, boy, the decals, some of them are really tough. What I did like is these decals are pretty thick, so they don't want to fold over themselves, which I've noticed with like Hasegawa and Tiger. Their decals are so thin that you have a chance of ripping them very easily, or worse, they literally fold onto each other and then you're going to rip them trying to get them apart. These decals were pretty thick, but they just weren't designed perfectly. So for this livery here, this chevron was much too wide. It would lay onto the wing, so I didn't even bother putting it on. Also, the decals that go around the end, I think these are fuel tanks. It's one decal and it wraps around, but I'm going to show you, I skipped it on this one because I decaled this one first. And so let's get into the models now. So I guess we'll show you the one I decaled first. And this one I have in flight mode. I just drilled out a 2mm hole, 3D printed my own stand. Alright, so I used Vallejo water-based paints for the majority of this. After I shot the silver, I hand painted this darker, like gunmetal color, and then I clear coated it with Vallejo, and it's a matte varnish, but it actually looks a little glossy, so it's kind of weird. The cockpit I used liquid masking, and it's not a good idea. I think you're better off just using masking tape, or even possibly trying to hand paint it with a brush, because these ridges are not as shallow as Hasegawa. They're not as raised as Tiger. So all I know is the liquid masking stuff, it just leaves a rough edge, as you can see. You know, it's not a clean edge like a masking tape or hand painting can do. If you hand paint it, any excess, you just take a cute toothpick, a plastic one, so you don't scratch this, and you just scrape off the extra paint. So now I know, but I built all these, you know, in a batch, so you're going to see other videos where you have pretty wacky cockpits. But you can see the fighter pilots there. I have some school glue holding this together. Let me pull this off. I have some decals left over from some Top Gun Chen figures, so I put those face decals on, and that's why I didn't use the clear thing. But it did have the opaque piece painted that black. In this one I have the mask, and there might be a hose as well. But this one I just left open so you can see the face. You could theoretically pose this head. There's like a ball peg there, but I glued them in place because they're too floppy without. So this one has the flight stick hand, and then there's a decal way in there. Boy, that's so far back it's hard to see, but yeah, there you go. And then there's a decal for the back person. Alright. This might be the one, well, I don't know. I think this is the one where I messed up, and there's a bunch of UV glue that I put in there after I tried to jam. I took this peg hole and I jammed it upwards to move the cockpit up, and then I put UV glue to try to keep it horizontal because I missed that peg when I was putting the interior together. So that's the whole earlier complaint of this video. Okay, so anyways, all these decals were okay. This is one giant, this here is a giant decal, but it laid on okay. This is a separate decal. These actually weren't that difficult. There's one decal that wraps around the cone. The main one is this. This is a decal, and it was very, very wrinkly. I had to use super strong Tamiya mark fit, and there's still, a wrinkle here. Most of it, ended up smooth, but yeah, because of the wrinkliness here and here, it just looks ugly. So that's why I skipped it on the next airplane. So even this this panel here, it's a bit, gappy. It's not very tight, not very good. And then the wing here, yeah, it was very loose. I think I added glue afterwards. These decals are really hard to put on because all decals usually have a clearness on the edges, and that clearness makes the decal wider than the plastic it's sitting on. So for these decals, I recommend you trim off the clear part of the decal so it can sit properly. Yeah, I almost just threw those decals away because it was such a pain to put on, but I did go back and add them after I trimmed them off a little bit. Okay, yeah, the decals on the missiles was okay. Yeah, this thing, I don't know, it's got these little ridges. I think they designed it so you can add and remove the landing gear, but it makes it look weird to have these little teeth there. It would just be better to have a tighter panel. I took the decal sheet and put this on just to tell me what the airplane is. Okay, so that's this one. I believe you're supposed to actually paint maybe this area black, but I didn't want to run the risk of screwing it up, so I didn't paint that. It would have been nice if they just gave you a black decal here instead, because it's not that big of a curve, or it's not that difficult compared to something crazy like that. So it's weird that they would have, leave such a simple decal out of the decal sheet. Okay, for the other one, obviously I have the landing gear in there. So, yeah, not too difficult really. See, but this decal thing here again, it's yeah, it's not laying very well because I had that a little extra clear, and I guess it just didn't lay down properly. So I skipped over the 3 color stripes around here, knowing it would wrinkle, and also skipped the giant one here because it was bigger than that surface, I think. I don't want to run the risk of screwing it up and having to peel it off, and yeah, it's just easier to not have it at all. And then again, this is supposed to be black, but I skipped it. So this is, I made this one the single seater, and I have some sort of Gundam decal on there in the face from Top Gun Chen. So yeah, it's just a bigger blanking panel, so instead of a second pilot there. So the engines I paint washed with some AK Interactive jet engine wash and stuff, and I think that's it. Here's the rolling thing. But yeah, it's really hard to paint a tire around a wheel. I just don't, yeah, I really wish it just made a wheel piece and a separate tire piece that slides over it. This one I can understand, it's so small, this is one piece, but the wheel's so far inset from the tire is very easy to paint, you know? But this one, the wheel is kind of close to the tire edge, so it's a little harder to paint. I also didn't put the underside decals of the wings because I glued these pylons on before I painted it. So if you want to have the Air Force sticker, decal, basically these two things on the bottom, you're going to have to put the decals on before you put the missile pylons on, or just omit them entirely. Okay, so let's look at a few other planes. So even before the Starfighter existed, the first American jet fighter was the Sabre, the F-86 Sabre, and this is an egg plane by Hasegawa, but this is a hodgepodge mix of decals that I had. So this is supposed to be a Japanese livery, but I wanted to look American, so that's what's going on here. But I feel like Hasegawa is just under-detailed. There are no panel lines on this egg fuselage, right? It's just all smooth like an egg. So I do like the deformation and the panel detailing of this brand a lot more. It just looks like a deformed airplane, right? And also, this one I don't think came with a figure. This figure's from a different Hasegawa kit. So the figures of these are really cool, even though they're much, much smaller. So Top Gun Chen is a person you can buy model kits or painted models from eBay, and these are just superior in every way. They have magnetic parts, you can swap out the loads, and then the figures have magnetic heads and all that stuff. And look at the detail of this thing. Panel gaps, painting. It's just really, really cool, and swappable parts. But it's significantly, exponentially more expensive as it should be. So, just some jet fighters from 3 different brands, I suppose you could call it. Although this is made by an enthusiast, not a company. Well, I'm a little torn. You know, there's good and bad about these. The good is when you're finished, they look really cool, especially having some people inside of them. The bad is the fit and finish of them is not very good. A lot of parts are loose, but also a lot of parts are tight. Like a lot of pylons, I had to scrape off plastic and paint to fit them into their grooves to get those missiles on and all that stuff. So it's like the production tolerances of these molds has gone bad or something. They're just not. You get spoiled by things made by Bandai. Bandai Gundam model kits, they're all friction fits. You don't need to even paint them, and they look fantastic. But this you kind of have to paint. There's no way around it, and they're just kind of sloppy model kits. There's a lot of, I guess, stuff you're getting for the money. A lot of decal details, the figures, and all that. It wasn't an enjoyable time to make compared to the other brands like Tiger. Tigers are so few parts. Like these missiles here are 2 parts. You have to glue one half to the other. I would just rather have one missile molded instead of having to glue 2 pieces. I feel like it could be done, but maybe not. I don't know. Alright, well, thanks for watching anyways. It's not going to stop me from buying this brand because they do seem to have a lot of other cool airplanes. It's just, I know that they're not going to be a fun time to build. Alright, thanks for watching. We'll see you the next time around.